much slow. There's things that we have that we don't even realize because we have so much going on a daily basis. It comes from us not spending enough time with ourselves.
You know what? We're not sleeping enough. This is why we don't have enough, like this is why we're reacting sometimes.
Sometimes you feel like you're in a rat race with the world and trying to keep up and do all these things.
And we're like, okay, do we want to be a thermostat or a thermometer? A thermostat sets.
Hello, you two.
Hello. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. And yeah, may I ask you to introduce yourself before we start off?
Sure. So we're Theta State. My name's Arsha.
And I'm Arman. Together we're DJs and producers from Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, that's amazing. DJs and producers. I'm then curious also to find out what was first, the producing or the DJing.
Yes? It was definitely DJing for sure. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, we're going to dive in deeper to that one later on. First of all, I would like to start with your story, where you were born, where you grew up, and your first hobbies as a child.
So it'll be two separate stories. We'll keep it short, just because we didn't know each other as children. So I was born in Iran, in the Middle East, and my parents brought me over to Canada. They migrated here when we were 8 years old. My dad found a job out here, so I grew up mostly in Canada. In Iran, musically, my background, when I was a small child, my parents would put me in classes where, it was very elementary music theory, and you played the flute and basic keyboard and a couple of native instruments in Iran. That was my only memories of it. Other than that, when we came here, my parents were very academic. They didn't have any other background in music. That ended up in my 20s. It came back to me from my childhood.
And for me, I was born in Toronto, Canada. My mom's from the Philippines. My dad's from Iran. So right away, I was exposed to very different sounds. They were both into different types of music. I don't know if you know, but Filipinos love karaoke. So my whole life has been music, kind of ballads, anything, pop, rock. Both of my parents really liked traditional music, so Middle Eastern music, some different types of, I guess, kind of ballroom classic music. But like I said, in Toronto, there was a lot of underground music. So I had that exposure. And again, Toronto is extremely multicultural. So that's what I had grown up with. My mom also loved dance, so she put me in some dance. So that's really the beginnings for me with music until I grew up and entered the underground scene as a partier.
Yes. Before we go back to music, what else except of music were your hobbies?
For me, it was sports for sure. So actually, your rundown, soccer, football was very big in Iran. So I was into that as a young age. When we came to Canada, I played it a bit in school, but the way life happens, I ended up becoming friends with the bad kids. So we moved away from sports and the good stuff, and I actually kind of fell apart from that. Even with music and stuff, I got busy doing some stuff in the streets. Later on, all of that passed, and once you mature, you experience some life experiences, it all came back to me. What about you?
So for me, like I mentioned early on, my mom put me in different dance, rhythmic gymnastics. So not just with a hula hoop, you had to dance with it or dance with ribbons. Later on, a bit more athletic. I joined competitive swimming. In school, I was a bit taller than other girls, so I was in basketball, volleyball. A lot of, I think, kind of well-rounded, different sports, musical activities, and then, of course, academics growing up.
And I think before I met her, actually, my experience with this whole electronic music scene or the party scene or raves was much different, because before, when I used to go to these parties with the kind of friends I was going with, we were just going there. The intention wasn't about music. It was not the right intentions and stuff. So I had a totally different perspective. I never saw this side of it. So I was never in love with the music at those times that we go to parties. It was just we were going for the party or for the rave. It had nothing to do with, didn't care who the DJ was, didn't care Emma. But years later, once I met her and I started coming, I really started falling in love with the music. And it's been like such a crazy change between the two perspectives.
And let's dive into that later on, like what has changed, you know, and so on. So now you two, when have you met each other? Because like we come then back to like, what are the challenges of also working with each other in terms of music, but also privately. So when did you meet each other? And yeah, tell us about that. We're going to dive in deeper on that one.
So we met each other about 7 years ago through mutual friends. I was with some friends on a boat party. There was some DJs, international DJs there. She was with her friends there, and we kind of crossed paths. Eventually we had the same interest, and it was really, a lot of it was the same musical taste. And at the time we met each other, we were in our 20s, mid-20s, and we were at a point where a lot of our friends were getting married or settling down and having kids. So I wanted to go out and listen to certain music. None of my friends wanted to go. She had the same problem. So we kind of, that brought us together, really.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the beginnings, but in terms of longevity, when we met, like, we both definitely had ambition. We both definitely, in terms of interests, we also like, you know, certain spiritual activities, like, or just anything like centering, so like yoga, sports, as we mentioned. So like, I mean, recently we were just in a football rec club with each other. So yeah, like, again, music is what I think brought us together, but we do share a lot of interests.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Yeah. So you met each other at a party. So music wasn't already something you had in common, and also, and so you dated. So what happened? Like, you met each other, then you dated. What happened? So
at that point, we actually had two separate careers. It had nothing to do with music. I had my own career. She had a very successful career that she was doing great in. And we're just going out together, going to parties. We're going to a lot of parties. Some of the music we were hearing, and these were pretty good people that were having higher expectations of, and we felt it was a bit lacking. We wanted something more. And we had some local friends that were local DJs in the scene. So sometimes we'd go party after the club to their place. And they'd kind of introduce us. They had their equipment, maybe a couple of CDJs there. They would introduce us to their controller. They saw we had some interest. So that's how it kind of started going down that way. And it felt very natural to us, and something that we found a passion like very quickly. It felt very, just a connection you have in music, the connection that people have through music. It's not just the DJ and the audience, but just in general, that connection people have. That really struck a chord with us. So that kind of led us down that path.
Yeah, and like, I mean, personally, just with each other, we always enjoyed, like, from the get-go, like, sharing new music with each other, you know, like, waiting for each other's reactions. Like, that's definitely something that we both enjoy. And as he mentioned, like, when we're with friends, like, that's what you do, right? Like, just hanging out and just sharing music and seeing what people think about different sounds, really.
And I think it was really just for me, it was when we started mixing and we got like a little basic controller at home, and now you're playing the music that you love versus, you know, just other people's music. As soon as that you're playing two tracks that it's both your tracks that it really speaks to you, and then you're bringing in other tracks that are very personalized to you, it speaks through it. I think that's where the passion grew from.
Well, let's go back to personal, because like I assume that a lot of people have then also question, how can that work as a couple? You know, like, let's go a little way, like from, but you got like, you share like the same passion for music, and then you shared, you know, exchanging music is different than like really thinking about as a couple, is this going to work? What were your challenges? I mean, you were talking about it, obviously. So what were your talks and what were your concerns, you as a couple?
So I think because it started very casually and it was a fun thing, we had no intent to like, okay, let's be serious with this. In the beginning, it was so much easier. The walls are down, you know, it's a safe space. It's just, okay, be creative, explore, do whatever you want. It was great. When you start getting more serious, and I think, you know, you're taking it seriously, that's when the challenges come up, definitely.
Yeah, like as Arman mentioned, we had a couple of friends that were supportive and said, hey, if you guys are interested, we have some gear. So like he's mentioned, we were just playing around. But when we started to get feedback from friends of like, you know, you guys are really talented, like you guys could really go somewhere with this. Like, even though, of course, we felt we had that type of confidence, like to hear it externally was like, maybe we could go somewhere with this. And like on top of that, like we both have management experience, like we have a business mindset. So like we started to kind of see, you know, the dots connecting. But then of course, as you mentioned, like when you start any business, you have to look at, okay, well, what are the challenges that you see in front of you? And one thing that we have been working with is that we're both very strong personalities. We both know what we want. It's not a situation of like one person has a bunch of ideas and then the other person is just gonna kind of follow along and do whatever. Like we both have very strong opinions. So I think spiritually that has of course led to a lot of great lessons, challenges, things to overcome. And along the way, we've had to, because as a couple, we want to make sure we're working in the most positive way forward. We had to sort of explore, well, what are some tools and resources that we can utilize to, first of all, stay sane, continue our education, continue to learn, and continue to perform together.
And I think some of the things to consider or challenges that can come up, whether it's a couple that are doing something or two partners that are not even a couple, is, okay, musically, your taste can change over time, you know? So in the beginning, let's say, okay, there's two people, they love techno together and they're producing great techno together, you know? And a certain type of techno, because there's so many subgenres. It's very natural 10, 15 years down the line that these two timelines might start parting from each other because their musical styles changes. And to a certain point, that's happened to us sometimes, where there's a bit of sacrifice where you have to try to give some of yourself to try to meet in a middle ground. But then when you're doing that, are you being true to yourself as an artist? Are you being authentic? So that's been something that, like, it's a contemplation that you have to do.
Yeah. Well, I would rather also hear, like, personally, because, like, the challenge is also about people and their stories and the personal feelings. You know, you were talking about, like, you are two strong individuals as a couple. So what is an example of a challenge you faced with each other where you found a solution, or what was the solution to it on a personal, not on the music, but on a personal level? Because the taste in music, yes, I'm totally with you, that can change. That's one part. But I would say that the most common parts where problems occur are personal development issues and an issue as a couple, I would say, especially as a couple. What was one thing, like something where you can think of and say, like, we had this challenge, and what were your solutions to it?
Yeah.
I can also come in.
Go ahead.
And I'm sure, like, examples will come into our heads as we go, but as an example, I think, to dive into it, like, we both have management experience. We're both used to, of course, like, working with all levels of people, but at the end of the day, we're used to having our own team and our team listening to us, right? But like here, we've of course really had to figure out, well, like, what do we do in this situation? There can't be two bosses, right? There has to still be a leader, just like in any dance or something like that. So I'd say, like, even just like talking about what, maybe let's say, what's the brand, our branding, what kind of things can we post, right? We both have very different ideas, maybe. And like that has been, because we've been on Instagram since I believe 2020. So we've definitely, that's been a bit of a journey where we've had to really see, okay, how can we make this work? Is there a creative director? And eventually down the line, we decided, okay, you know what, like Arman's going to be in charge of those types of things. We have had to, like, just like any sort of business, any team, what is the etiquette? What is the process? And really it's like, okay, maybe we do some brainstorming, but ultimately, like, he gets to decide. Because in the end, that makes it easier. You can't have, in my opinion, even just in my other career, it's hard when you try to have two decision makers.
And we both have, like she said, very strong personalities, and they definitely do butt at times, sometimes in the studio, sometimes outside the studio. And it's interesting because there's a interconnected energy there where we could have an argument over dinner and it just completely takes you out of that creative state. So really one of the biggest challenges we've had, and to really help not block our, especially music careers and just ourselves in life, is keeping ourselves from getting into that fight or flight state, where once your stress comes up, your anxiety comes up, any of those issues come up, now you're not in that flow state, you're not in that creative state. So the more you're in those states, and nowadays in today's society, we're being bombarded with so much information that it's very easy to lose your balance. That's one of the main things that we've been talking about. So with that, we've tried different tools, you know, individually and together. Like she said, yoga, hot yoga, meditation, even if it's like 5 minutes daily meditation, just to let your mind calm down. Things like that is great. Breath work is an absolutely great tool that we use to try to regulate our nervous system.
Yeah. Like one of the most important sayings, I don't know if you remember where we got it from, but like we start to, you know, watch different talks, like you've posted about Sadhguru, like people like that who have, you know, are wise and have a lot of knowledge to share. So one thing that really stuck with us that has kind of helped drive the direction that we're going in, we're like, okay, do we want to be a thermostat or a thermometer? A thermostat sets the temperature and stays cool the whole time. A thermometer is reactive. So as Arman mentioned, with that in mind, it's like, okay, well, how do I become less reactive? Most recently, we realized we weren't sleeping a lot because, you know, we're investing a lot of time into this. We're not just producing, we're DJing. You know, we just had a gig this past weekend. There's a lot. You wish you could clone yourself and do all these different things because there's only 24 hours in the day. But, you know, like we really try to listen to our bodies personally and collectively and say, okay, well, what is it that's taking away my energy? You know, is it negative? Am I consuming negative things in my mind? That's been the ongoing practice. I don't want to say struggle. I want to say it's an ongoing practice.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of society as a whole, a lot of our anxiety, and on a subconscious level and unconscious level, there's things that we have that we don't even realize because we have so much going on a daily basis. It comes from us not spending enough time with ourselves. You know, really listening to your inner child, whatever it may be. And it's different for everyone. And especially because sometimes you feel like you're in a rat race with the world and trying to keep up and do all these things. Social media doesn't help. It's very easy to put that on a lower priority, to spend that time with yourself. You know, if I want to really connect with her and if I want to meet a great partner, I'm going to take them out on dates, spend time with them, get to know them better on a deeper level. So we need to do that with ourselves. We need to get to know yourself. If I'm just meditating one day a week for an hour, that's okay. I'm not going to get that deep. But if I'm doing it, you know, every day, maybe 5-10 minutes a day, seeing that person every day, having a deeper conversation. And that will relieve a lot of, I think, anxiety and stress for people.
Yeah. And just to add to like the social media thing, like that I think is also another big thing to be conscious of, because I think it's important to note, like we didn't have personal Instagram when we met, and we only, you know, created the account once we started Theta State. And I consider myself a very confident woman, and I did notice in a very short time of joining Instagram the effect it had on my self-esteem. And I wasn't even on it that much, and I was lucky to, you know, talk to a very close friend that I've known since I was 4 years old, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know why I'm having these thoughts. And she's like, it's Instagram. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So like, again, learning that, and like he said, like recognizing it's like, it's because you're immersed in a comparative platform. I need to spend time with myself then, if I'm starting to have these thoughts.
Absolutely. And the realness. I would like to dive into that one as well, because it is important. I love that openness. Thank you for that one, because I believe a lot of people don't even recognize what's happening with them when they consume on social media. And I'm so for realness. Even when I go running, I don't look good at all, but it's that realness I show into the story, where like the red hair and everything, and I look like that. But it's important that because there are so many filters and there's so much going on, and the more real we are, the more we show, hey, we are all
human.
Yes, we are human. Yes. We all got our flaws and so on. And these filters are really sometimes very dangerous. I see stuff where I say like, the people don't even recognize themselves anymore, you know?
I know.
So what's happening there? So I'm all about realness. That's also then where I like to show my red head and really look like not beautiful at all. And I don't even care, because it's like, that's one side of the story, right? There are plenty of other sides as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
And how do you now you recognize that and have seen that something happens with you too. So what have you done in order to, you know, kind of get a little some kind of distance, or what are your practices now with social media to make sure that it's not having a negative impact on your self-esteem and everything?
So as I mentioned before, Arman has been the creative director. So unfortunately, and this is where we need to figure out a balance, I've been fortunate enough to not have to go on the platform that much. So there is a section in I guess in any app where you can see how long have you spent. Yeah. So I always try to keep my average lower than like 30 minutes or less if possible. And then on top of that, something that I practice, I know we tried to practice together, was having one day off. So like I have it in my calendar, no socials day. And this is something I've been really trying to preach to people, because this is something I like to do, I think, in general, like with anything. Like as an example, I used to have coffee every day, but I didn't like that I needed something so regularly. So that's where I feel like I'm able to gain some control by saying, no, not today. These are just little things, but like, as I mentioned, I have been thinking about, well, I need to be more helpful to my partner on the platform, but how do we do that? That's our current, I think, challenge right now.
I think with regards to social media, I definitely feel like, for me personally, there's ways, or sometimes I can see like I'm actually going into it more and sometimes less. And it's a really fine line to walk, especially if you're trying to use it of a business or to grow your brand.
Yeah.
A very, very practical tip that's scientifically proven I would give to anyone who are listening is the first hour of when you wake up and the last hour before you go to bed. Absolutely. Not only no social media. Ideally, if you can, don't check emails. Don't check messages, you know. If we'll watch a show or something on TV to wind down, best is if you can read, if you have that discipline, or do something very calming. But at the minimum, don't try not to put out any fires, I'd like to say, which is like, if I check my email half an hour before bed and, you know, my boss said something, that's some big project I need to think about, now I'm going to sleep all night, my brain is thinking about that in my sleep, it's not resting. First thing in the morning, it's very important, don't go on social media. What happens is we become very reactive. Our brain is still in those theta brainwave states, why we're called Theta State. So our brain is very programmable, our mind is programmable at that time. So if I see anything that's triggering, you know, it could be some bad news, it could be something, even it could be good news. Oh, it's my best friend's birthday today, I'm so excited. What that does to the brain first thing in the morning, first hour of the morning, is now it's made me reactive for the rest of the day. So even though it was good news, because it spiked my energy like that, now 6 hours later throughout the day, someone might just say something very casually mild at work, and I'm gonna have a big reaction and overreact.
Absolutely.
Really staying away the first hour and the last hour of your day from social media would be great.
I love both of your answers. So really try to have like times where you have like off times of social media. It's very difficult when you look at it as a business. I see it myself. It's really hard.
Yes.
And the first thing and the last thing of the day, absolutely. And this is actually also a hard one for me, because like I'm so quick in, but now I've got my routines. The routines help me not to like open up those things in the morning, right? So yeah, so that's a good one. And now, two strong individuals, let's say you've got an argument, you don't agree with something. How do you two make sure that you're going to get back on track with each other again? Let's say you've got a disagreement, like, for example, social media, or if it also is in terms of music or whatever, where you don't really strongly disagree. So how do you, as a couple, because it's also in terms of partnerships, it's not only couples, but also partnerships, you know, and we've got a lot of times that, you know, there will come a point where it's really difficult. And how do you two make sure that you're going to get back on track again?
That's been the biggest challenge, I would say, definitely.
Yeah. We're in a better place though, so we can talk about the journey.
Yes.
It's constantly a back and forth. There's no one perfect answer that we found the solution that, okay, hey, you know what, like for example, every time we get in an argument, let's break for 20 minutes and come back, and then it doesn't work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So I think really the best tool, I would say personally, is taking a break, like just stepping away from that situation or the argument, and with the tools of like, if you are meditating daily and whatnot, if you're more in tune with yourself, I'm able to detach myself from the situation, try to look at it from her perspective, or if I was a fly on the wall, and see, okay, you know, if I'm not involved in anything, how would I feel? And even though I might still feel the way I feel, at least I end up having more sympathy and compassion. So we end up resolving it somehow that way, with, you know.
So yeah, that's been the goal, and I think we should both be excited to say that we are at a really good point where it feels like, forget about the relationship, it's a business at that point. And to explain how we got here, like as he mentioned, you first of all have to be in that state where you can notice like your heart's racing, you're getting angry, your face is turning a bit red. Yeah. You're very attached to this idea. And like that's, so I don't know if you want to talk about this book, but there was this one book that Arman had and he shared with me like very early on in our relationship. And it was called The Laws of Spirit. And it's a very beautiful book where it's like the commandments of life, basically, right? And one of it is law of detachment. And it's like, okay, like, so that's something we've always told ourselves, like, is this topic important enough to continue? Is this attachment important enough, right? And And like I said, or like we mentioned, like this is kind of the current state, but in the past, that's how we started to recognize, you know what, we're not sleeping enough. This is why we don't have enough, like this is why we're reactive sometimes. We're like sleeping 4 or 5 hours a day because like we go to sleep after the studio, we wake up in the studio, and then we're noticing like little things like you left your dish here. It's like, yeah, you know, setting us off. So
I think that's a great point you made, that we find like, again, it's more being, so sometimes I'll go, let's say we're so busy, I don't meditate for 3 weeks straight. And in those times, it's much easier for me to keep going unconscious, these arguments to blow up faster and be more frequent, because I'm just in it too much. And I think that's the truth, the way I see it. But when you're more in tune with yourself, like sometimes it might be a lack of sleep. Like, you know, we're fighting and then she's like, babe, like last 3 nights, you've only slept 3 hours a night. This is why your brain is acting. And no, it's hard for me to believe it, but I think the more really, I don't want to keep going back to meditation. However, where, you know, people are in tune with themselves, being there with yourself, that really helps with this, and finding different tools depending on the situation.
Oh yeah.
And,
yes.
Just as a finale to it, like just having a shared goal, I think, because we both share the goal of we want to be a successful couple and we want to be a successful DJ producer duo. Is this helping me right now? You know, is this bringing me closer to the goal or further away? And I think that actually, like, that is a huge part of it too.
Yeah, having a goal. I would say like one of the important message in here is having a common goal with each other, right? And as an individual. The other thing I wanted to ask, like, how do you make sure, because we were also talking, or you were talking about as an individual, you know, having space for yourself. Now you got 2 very busy lives. So how do you now organize, and how much time do you have for yourselves as an individual? How did you organize that?
I think it depends, again, on, you know, you set your goals and your life and your kind of schedule kind of revolves around depending on what the goal thing is. But we've set a very high bar for ourselves of where we're trying to go with this. Now, hey, worst case, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to what my day job was. Yeah. But to get where I want to get, I have to put the work in, you know. So we're very dedicated. I would say we're trying to find a balance and balance is key in life. A lot of the stuff we've been studying. So that's the one area where we've struggled a bit, is we're great at our own work. We're great at music, making music together, making music separately. But when it comes to the amount of hours left in the day, there's a lot of times not even time left to cook dinner, for example. Yeah. So we're sacrificing eating healthy food at home to eating takeout food or spending time together. Yeah. So that's been a big challenge, actually, to really most importantly is we're a couple, but I want to have the feeling I want her to still love me and still like that romance to be there. It's not just like, okay, we're business partners. It's turned into this thing. We're just music partners now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So like, yeah, I love what you just mentioned. Because I think it all starts with obviously being aware, and then now looking into what you can do, because we've read some books by like some power couples and like, you know, some that are really up there, and it's like, well, what do they do? And it's like, okay, even though they could fly, they have a private jet, they could go anywhere, sometimes they insist on like a 5-hour road trip, right? Just so they have that time alone. So like we like to look for inspiration like that, and we really try to, and this is what I love about Arman, he always says, okay, well, we have to have our date time, you know, like, because we could be having lunch, dinner, talking about Theta State music. Oh, I'm thinking about, you know, creating a track that sounds like this. We could talk about this forever. But then that's where, yeah, we've had to sort of recognize like, well, this isn't our identity. We don't want to like put everything into that all the time. How do we stay balanced? Yes, making sure we have that alone time, making sure we have time to work out. Like we really are very supportive of that. Like in my past, like I've had to sacrifice a lot of exercising and diet just for like work. but then I would see how it doesn't work. It led to my burnout, like about maybe like before I met him, 8-9 years ago. So yeah, it starts with the awareness, and we don't have the perfect answer. But
and then in terms of scheduling to kind of go towards your goal, one of our main mentors, this DJ and producer, international DJ and producer from Toronto also, his name is Demir. He's amazing. He kind of put us on this, okay, take your top 3 or top 5 things you need to do each day. Let's say, for example, it's music production, DJing, we want to get some DJing in, and the third thing could be working out, for example. 5 is even better, and prioritize them in what's the most important to you and what you're trying to achieve in life. So if every morning I wake up and the first thing I do is go to the gym every morning, I'm going to have a great body. But by the time I get home after work, I don't have energy to make music. I can't get upset if I don't reach my goal of, trying to do what I do. So one thing we found for creative purposes, this is again, for studying and watching different videos and reading different texts, is they say that, and my personal experience, and I think Arsha is the same, she would agree, is the best creative juice you have, you want, whether it's painting, writing, you want to come up with a business idea, whatever they say is first thing in the morning, the first 2 hours. So again, that goes back to the theta state brainwaves and when you're first waking up and not looking at your social media. So now we've gotten a good routine where even though I'm personally a night owl, I like stay up late. I don't mind waking up early, but I usually can't go to sleep early. But in the mornings, I've tried to adjust. I'll wake up at 6 p.m. Arsha as well. When we jump in the studio, I have to be at work at 9. But even if it's just 1 hour in that morning, it's a lot more productive, a lot more efficient than like 2-3 hours at nighttime when I don't have that creative use. So for the creative people and trying to come up with some good ideas, brainstorming, business ideas, or anything creative, I would say there's first 2 hours in the morning. Yeah.
And when do you have your date nights? So because you were talking, but are you having regular date nights?
No, and that's a great advice you're giving us. No, but you know what?
Tell her.
It should become, she's right, because the best way to do it with any of these things, okay, let's say every Sunday, no questions asked, let's make it. Exactly. And then you come into it, right?
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. But we did have a very lovely date the other night with his best friend and the wife. So we had a double date. It was lovely.
Beautiful.
What we do right now, our system, I don't know if it's the best or not. Again, we kind of modeled it after our mentor by accident. But we'll work really hard at music and just life, like 3 months in a row, maybe 2-3 months in a row. Then we'll take a good 2 weeks off and go on vacation. So while we're on vacation, if there's networking opportunities, it's all music related because we love music, that's there. Really during that time is when we're trying to kind of unwind and recharge our batteries. So for example, in June, we're going to Sonar Festival in Barcelona. That's coming up. It's your 30th.
Oh. Yeah. Beautiful. And that's a good one. Also having breaks really and really follow through them breaks as well in order to be creative later on again. That's a good one.
It's really like what's key is investing in yourself. So like, we made sure like we're going to Barcelona for 2 weeks. We're making sure we're like easing into it. Like the first week, it's like, okay, let's do our sightseeing. Let's do some stuff for ourselves. But then the next week, it's like straight business and party.
Yeah, and it's needed. It's needed. Life is also there for that, for the joy in life. So now we're heading off to the end. I would like to have 2 questions. Now, Theta State. Okay, the name. Why this name and how it came?
Okay, so Theta State refers to the brain state it's in when your brain waves are at theta brainwaves, which is the lower than full conscious brainwaves, so you're not fully awake. It usually happens first thing in the morning when you're waking up. That first window when you're coming out of your dreamland and you're kind of in the real world, but you're in dream world. At nighttime when you're going to bed, when you're starting to go into dreamland, but you're still awake, that's theta state. So during that time, the window to the conscious mind and the window to the subconscious mind are open at the same time. So this is the same thing as when people are put into hypnotic states, hypnotherapy. They're just bringing their brainwave states down. Meditation does the same thing to you. So this is a very powerful brain state. It's a transcendental brain state. And what's important about it is this is where you can program people. A lot of healing can happen. And also when we're children from 0 to 7 years old, their brain is constantly running in theta brainwaves. So a lot of trauma happens to people at those ages too, right? So it had a personal connection, you know, when we're looking for a name to come up for us to, we really connect with what it means to us. And we hope that through music, we're able to place people into those kind of instincts and they can hopefully heal and, you know.
Yeah, I think, I love, just to add to that, I think like it also really represents our journey, as we mentioned, right? Where we're just like, hey, like we want to study what's in here and how do we make sure we optimize ourselves? Like, because as we mentioned earlier, like it is challenging as a couple. A lot of people said like you're entering dangerous territory. But like we really stuck to Theta State, right? Like how do we improve ourselves? How do we gain new skills? Like that's actually like a huge hack apparently. Like you can easily learn or more easily learn languages, learn different new content, new types of information, as long as you're in a Theta State brainwave.
And the whole reason our fascination, really to be fully honest with you, I would say with Theta State was it came about, okay, we all have our own issues. I need to fix my issues. And I started doing some research, you know, how do we fix these issues? And it led us to the theta brainwaves and where you can do a lot. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah. So people should also look into Joe Dispenza and his amazing work. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, not only there's Mind Valley where they really teach you.
Yes,
exactly. It's amazing. So
yeah. So that's I think that's really why it's so important to us, because like, you know, your whole life you hear people say you can't do that, this and that, and it's like, well, why not? And this is kind of what led to all of this.
Why not? And there's so many tools. I would say like that's one also important one, like the Theta State, but there's so many tools out there. And yes, why not? Why not? Yes, absolutely. I love that. So have you got a vision, like a 5 or 10 year vision? And what is it?
What's it? 5 year, I would say definitely we see ourselves in Europe. That's where we're trying to make our moves to come over there, because in terms of the electronic music scene and the underground music scene in North America, it's a totally different machine. And it's just not as present as over in Europe is more home. We also love just living in Europe, like having visited there in terms of geographically how it's designed. It's very walkable. So we want to be there, making music. Hopefully you'll see our names on some bigger flyers, having gigs. 5 to 10 year eventually would be, I would say, a natural progression, I would say, is to have a record label. But besides the music part, really what we truly believe in is giving back, because people have given to us, and you know, feel as the universe is bringing us tools through different people and different bits of information, and we want to pass that on, and we want to, you know, open doors for other people, and maybe we can.
Right, beautiful. Yes, I'm really curious to see you then on the billboard, on the great. Yeah. So, I've got the last one. Pick a card. I don't know if I did that last time with you, but
I'm excited.
Let's do the pick a card, and you can decide who's going to say stop, because I'm going to shuffle the cards, and then and just say stop, and then it's going to be whatever picture it's going to be.
Okay, stop.
Which one? From this one?
Top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Never seen this one before. That's cool.
This is our relationship. Fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this picture? I love it.
Right away, it's like everything we talked about. It's like there's something to take care of. We're not sure which tool, so we're bringing in a hammer, we're bringing in a wrench, we're seeing what works. Committed to the goal.
I
Amazing.
think it's saying, yeah, like you need the right tool for the right job.
Exactly, tools. I love that, right? Tools. We're talking about it. So it's so interesting, and it's always the perfect picture. I don't know why, but it always works.
This is crazy. So it's
good.
your energy that's connected to something, you know?
I don't know, but it's so interesting, because we didn't pick a dog, because on one of the last interviews it was like, and she already bought a new dog, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
And she was picking that, and now we were talking about so many tools and how you can help.
Yeah.
And it's like it's crazy. I love it. But thank you on
Thank you.
the picture. So guys, it was an amazing chat with you guys, and I'm really curious where you're going, and we're going to keep in touch anyways. And how can people get in touch with you, your social and perhaps your website or whatever, where people get in touch with you?
So easiest way to get in touch with us is on Instagram. It is Theta State Official. It's all one word. Also, we're launching our Bandcamp. I think by the time this video comes out, we will have launched our Bandcamp page. With that launch, we're going to be releasing 2 tracks fully mastered by one of the best mastering engineers in the game. And we're going to release that as kind of our gratitude and appreciation for everyone and the whole music industry and really the world. We're going to release that as a free release. If people want to donate, they can, but it's really for people to get free access to music. So our Bandcamp, Instagram, SoundCloud, you can find a lot of our DJ mixes. It's all the same handles. So Theta State Official. You can find us on Instagram, on SoundCloud, and by the time this video comes out, on Bandcamp as well.
Amazing. Send me the link then as well, please.
Absolutely.
Add it
We'll send you music. Absolutely.
Add in the video. So, what a great chat, guys. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you
For the
so
love
much.
of music, right? So,
It's always fun with you.
yeah, amazing, and totally different again. So I love that. So I love it.
It's very creative what you're doing too, right? Because you just created something that can never be replicated. It's one very unique thing. Every time you do it, it's something completely creative.
That's the great. I love that about creativity. It's also with music or paintings and so on. You cannot replicate it. It's something I really do love. So.
Yeah, it's cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. It was amazing. And I'm going to let you know then when it's going to be published. I can't wait. So
sounds good. Sounds good. Enjoy your Sunday. We'll see you soon.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye,
Date night, hopefully. Date night.
Bye-bye, you guys.